there, and welcome to another episode of Life After High School for Students with Disabilities. I'm Catherine Kostelik with Hardin County Schools, and I'm excited to talk more with Carolyn Wheeler. Carolyn is a project director with the Human Development Institute at the University of Kentucky, and she has over 35 years of experience in this field. And also personally, she has served as power of attorney and the financial payee and being financially responsible for individuals with intellectual disabilities. So she has a lot of personal experience helping to plan and shape future planning for students with, for individuals with disabilities. So we're happy to have you.
Well, thank you, Katie. I'm really glad to be here. It's great to see you again. Katie was a graduate student and actually was at the Human Development Institute a few years ago. Right, so we got to know her then, so it's great to see you again in your professional capacity.
Yes,
Realize.
thank you for being
so
here.
I'm really glad to be here. So this is a topic that is really near and dear to my heart. For personal reasons, I've actually figured this out for, I guess, 3 different people with intellectual disabilities whose family members either, well, for the first person was one unwilling, and then with the second 2 people, really their family members were deceased. But to figure out what a good life would look like for them, and then to figure out what are the things that I need to put in place in terms of the financial part, and then also just other people that need to be involved in case something had happened to me. And then I've just also, over those number of years, have had the really awesome privilege of just knowing lots of extraordinary parents and family members and siblings. So I hope some siblings will watch this, because siblings, parents, by the way, and just you don't want to think about this, but in fact siblings outlive their parents by 20 or more years. And so really helping your sibling, your other children, to understand what their role will be at some point, perhaps in their sibling's life, is just really important conversation to have at some point in time. So I'm just really excited that you're listening to this recording, and I hope the information that we will provide will be helpful to you. So I think where I'd like to start really, Katie, is to share information about an organization that I would encourage you to join. So I'm going to first show you the Center for Future Planning, which is part of the ARC of the U.S.'s website. Now, the ARC of the U.S. is a national organization that was founded by parents in 1950.
Okay, wow.
So a long time ago. And it was really founded by parents who, there just were no other resource. There wasn't anything. There was nothing. If you think there's nothing today, there was nothing at all other than these really horrific, dehumanizing institutions. And so they banded together on a national level and then also formed state chapters. So I'm going to first show you the resource from the ARC of the U.S. and then show you the state chapter and encourage people to join the ARC of Kentucky, because it's really a way then to get connected to other families, to other people, and then just also to what's going on in the universe. So the first website I'd like you to go to, again, in thinking about this planning, again, it's called the Center for Future Planning. You can see the URL up here, but it's futureplanning.thearc.org. And so it talks about what the ARC is, but this is really a website that can guide you about what is it you need to think about. So again, what is future planning? And so it's really trying, again, to help people to lead a good life as independently as possible. And so a plan is important throughout all stages of a person's life, but especially in the future after the parent or caregiver is no longer able to provide support. And so you can click on each of these links and learn more about what you need to be thinking about. And then you can actually go to this website to build your own future plan. And so Build Your Plan is a tool that enables families to create accounts, online accounts. So again, I think this is really helpful, Katie, because often, and again, my experience is more, in all honesty, with adults who are now 20s, 30s, 40s, and on. And their adult siblings may not live in the same state, but still want to play a role, and most likely will play a role once mom and dad are no longer able to provide that care or that support. And so doing something online, just in this day and age, just makes a lot of sense. Now again, if that's not, and so for those of you watching this recording, I'm assuming the computer's not new to you, you're pretty comfortable with it, and so again, it's a way, and it also gives you a document that you can change. So I think it's a really great place to start. And then you can also see some stories of how other people have planned, and then it talks about urgent help, although I'm going to tell you where you would call here in Kentucky if that's really an issue or factor for you. So I would really encourage you to go to this website, spend some time on it, do it at a time when, you might have an hour and you could really spend some time drilling down and see what all is there. And then I'm going to encourage you to then click on this website and go to the ARC of Kentucky's website. So the ARC of Kentucky is Kentucky's state chapter. And the ARC of Kentucky was actually formed in 1955. So again, it's probably the oldest organization, again, for families and now self-advocates who really want to promote independence, opportunities, and continue to advocate for good lives for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And so you can join right here online. It's $25. That will make a person then actually a member of the National Arc,
Okay.
or the Arc of the U.S. So,
Okay, wonderful.
and then you get that information as well, because the Arc of the U.S. has been a critical player since 1950 and why we have what we have today. I mean, whether it's school, I mean, they were part of advocating, excuse me, for Public Law 94-142, which we now know as IDEA. And so they play a major role. They have an office in Washington and really educate lawmakers. And then the Arc of Kentucky has played a major role here in our state. In fact, the waivers that we'll talk about briefly, we have because of a lawsuit that the Arc filed back in like about 1979. So they're really a critical advocacy, but also a great resource for families as well. And then there may be a local chapter depending on where you live. So just want to encourage you to do that. So after kind of drilling down on that website, to me, Katie, the very first thing that families really need to think about is, and they really should be thinking about right off the get-go, but it's really what is the vision, what is your vision for a future? What is it that you want, what would a good life look like for your family member, regardless of his or her age? Because this kind of planning, really, none of us knows, right, when something might happen. And so it's just really critical to be thinking if you've got a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 15-year-old or maybe even a 20, 21, 22-year-old, but if something did happen to you, and if they're one-parent family, then, you know, for a 2-parent family, regardless. But what would happen if those who know and love your child the best, if something were to happen and they were no longer able to provide the care and support, what would you want life to look like? So I'm going to show people some resources that I think that really will serve you well now, in terms of also thinking about, you know, if your child's transitioning from preschool to kindergarten, what would kindergarten look like? You know, or if they're transitioning from middle school to high school, but then also thinking about adult life. So those tools are available online at a website called Charting the Life Course. So I'll go up to the top. You can see it's just lifecoursetools.com. And then all of these are downloadable documents and they're free. So again, I'm trying to show you, again, it costs your time. It costs your time, but very accessible to look at. Exactly. So I've opened a couple of these, and so want to show them to you. So this set of tools were actually developed in large part by parents at Human Development Institute's counterpart in Missouri. And so the guiding principles is this core belief that all people have the right to live, love, work, play, and pursue their life aspirations just as others do in the community. And these tools are really looking to support positive life trajectories and preventing as much as we can. Again, lots we can't control, but what can we do to prevent negative life events that would lead people away from that good life? And you can see the images down here across the bottom. This represents that this starts at infancy, and then can go all the way until people are, quote, I like the word mature versus senior, but to wherever you are in the lifespan. So these are really, regardless of the age of your child, these tools are for you. And really these tools, Katie, given your role as a school psychologist, they're not just for children with disabilities. I mean, these are just tools for planning for the future, okay?
So teachers could even.
Teachers, absolutely. Teachers of
with kids at any age.
At any age and because these are all things that we're wanting. Again, we want isn't the end in mind of school is to help people to be equipped and prepared to hopefully be responsible, contributory, productive citizens. So that's really the guiding principle. And then here are the stages and life domains. So again, here are the life domains. Again, prenatal infancy all the way to aging, but meaningful day in employment. Now, obviously, if you have a preschool child, you might not be thinking about what they're going to do in terms of work. But if you look at preschool toys, or dress up. I have a 3.5-year-old granddaughter, and for Christmas, my daughter wanted us. I bought her. They live in Sweden, but I bought on Amazon, and then my other daughter went to Sweden and took, it was like a fire person's outfit and a doctor's outfit. I mean, you're thinking about adult roles. There's with dressing up. Or people talk about what their mommy or daddy does. And so we're thinking about those things. So, and then community living. So where and how would you live? And safety and security is obviously a huge issue. Staying safe and secure, so emergencies, well-being, guardianship options, legal rights and issues, healthy living. And we know that in this country we do have a big issue around healthy living. And in Kentucky in particular, we're not the healthiest state. And so really trying to set things in motion early on in life to help people to eat healthy, to move more, and not pick up bad habits. Again, if you look at that trajectory, that's a big part of it. And then social and spirituality, building friendships and relationships. And I just can't stress that enough. I just can't stress that enough. Yes, people, by and large, will probably need some kind of publicly funded service. But your son or daughter needs at least one person who's not paid to be in their life, who's going to be in their life as long as they're able to be in their life, to help safeguard their future. We just need at least one, and preferably more. But we do, Katie. If you think about the quality of your life, my life, it's in the relationships that we have. And understandably, children with disabilities are going to possibly, probably need more help around social skills or connections or intentionality around that. So it's just so critical because, again, the roles that I played in people's lives, they've had publicly funded services, but they're not capable of figuring that out.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot that has to be figured out. And even as I've had family members grow older, they need a partner. There has to be somebody, again, who helps figure things out. Yes. So just this friendships and after-school activities and faith communities are huge. And I know some are not very welcoming, but there's a lot of material out there to help churches and faith communities to become more welcoming. And then citizenship and advocacy, really helping people to have valued roles that not really get into, I think, the mindset of everything having to be special. I mean, I'm not against anything. I mean, Special Olympics is huge. It's awesome. It's wonderful. But at the same time, how do we just help kids be involved with activities with typical kids? Yes. So that there's a kind of a range of activities. So we're not always looking for something that just is with people with disabilities, but really is with all kids. So again, that relationships can flourish and grow. So there are life stages and domains across all of those areas. And so the planning tools really provide opportunities for parents then to think about a vision. So here's a tool for developing a vision for family, and then there's also one for the individual. Now clearly you wouldn't give this to your preschool child, but if you have a high school student,
this transition age
that we're talking about, or even middle school, it's done this way purposefully because, in all honesty, parents, your children may have a different idea, and that can be okay. I mean, I'm not suggesting if they have a different idea that would lead them down the path of destruction. We're not wanting to support that, but they may really have some different ideas. So, in fact, I use this for the woman, again, for whom I'm a power of attorney, not legal guardian, but she receives the Michelle P. waiver. So for her last planning meeting, I sent this to the people that are paid to be in her life, unpaid to be in her life, and actually asked someone she lives in Louisville, I live in Lexington, but to talk with her. She's a woman of few words, but she has some certain ideas about what she'd like her life to look like because she is retired. She is not working anymore. But to think about these areas in her life, and it really meant for it was a better meeting. So, what's your vision, what the priority might be, what are some things that we could work on now? So again, regardless, remember the age, it could be any age to start thinking about these areas. And in particular, in the topic that we're talking about today, usually the big issue has a lot to do about safety and security. And so I'll talk some more about some legal things you want to put in place, but to also remember that really true safety and security really comes from having people who love you. And that you can't buy. That you can't buy. Although sometimes it's been people who are paid to be in a person's life that may actually end up filling that role. And then the other worksheet that I just love is this life trajectory. And again, there's one for a family member and there's one for an individual. I think I only opened the one for family. And you can print these out in color, and that's really nifty, but obviously printing them out in black and white. But I'll tell you what I would encourage you to do, and I would encourage teachers to do this, or if you work with children to do this, you get Sharpie markers. You do this in color.
Okay.
You don't just use a black pen to write in, but use color, and use a different color for each area, and maybe draw pictures.
Okay.
Because that just will enliven the conversation. Because your child's future is not the Michelle P. waiver. You have a vision for Linda, I have a vision for her future. The Michelle P. waiver resources helps to put that vision into place. Does that make sense, Katie?
Absolutely.
And same with vocational rehabilitation. So your child's future isn't just about obtaining a publicly funded resource. I think too often we think if I only get this, that, or the other thing, those are means to an end.
Absolutely.
They're means, and you need those, but it needs to support the vision. It needs to support the vision that you're wanting to go. And so this trajectory, again, you can see the arrow, and then there's space here to put life experiences that would help you in that direction, and then life experiences that won't. So I would love to do this with my 14-year-old grandson. I would. I probably won't have the nerve, but I mean, he's almost 15 now. But if you think about it, if you think about if what you want, and whether it's whatever it is up here, but your behavior is taking you here, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So because it's the principle of the path.
Yeah.
Direction determines destination, not intention and not even information. So for example, I'm leaving after today, Katie, I'm going to head to Bowling Green actually for a special needs expo tomorrow. Lots of families hopefully in that area. So if I get on 65 North, I'm not going to get to Bowling Green.
No.
Am I? No matter how well intended I am. I mean, I'm going to end up in Louisville, right? So similarly, it's what is our behavior? I'm sure you know a lot about that, but if you know the behavior really, so this to me visually though can help to capture that.
Well, and they're wonderful because once you're having that conversation and getting paper down, you've started somewhere. It's concrete.
You have.
It gets you on the path.
It does.
Rather than just sort of wishes and hopes kind of floating there.
Exactly.
It gives you a really good solid step. So.
And same in terms of maybe what it is that needs to be happening at home. I mean, no offense parents, but sometimes, we have parents that are just too easy. I'm sorry, but you're too easy. Do your kids have chores?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. We had a chore chart from the time our kids were, I don't know, maybe 5 and 7. I mean, they can help empty the dishwasher.
Helps you tweak some stuff.
Some stuff that maybe in that, so what are your expectations around, again, adult behavior and helping children to the best of their ability just to be responsible. And so in any event, so I think these are great tools because, again, you're right. Just talking isn't enough. Got to figure out a way to have the rubber meet the road. So again, those tools are all available on that website that I pointed out. They're all online.
I've already mentioned it, Carolyn, but those are free resources.
Yes, thank you, Katie.
And all of the ones that you showed at the ARC are
all these are free
at no cost.
And actually, my suggestion is if you really would be to download the book.
Okay.
It's not real long, it's pretty easy to read, but it will tell you about all of the tools that are available here on this website. And so again, these actually give you some examples of exploring life possibilities, and these are, if I open them, it'd be too hard to probably read, but then this is the integrated STAR support worksheet, and this really, it gives a way to think about, see if we can get it to download while we're talking about it, but it provides a means to really think about, again, services are going to be a part of a student's life, but again, what about their own personal assets? So here we go. So you've got a place to put maybe what the goal is, and this might have to do with employment. I mean, after school, if you're going to work or you're going to volunteer, what is it that you're going to be doing? So then you look at what are my personal strengths and assets that are really going to contribute to that? What are relationships that I have? Again, my very first job was because of my mother, and I got other jobs because of family members or people that I know. So who are relationships that could be connected, that could be supportive, that might be a mentor, that might help me learn how to do something I need to learn to do? And then how does technology help? Now I know for a fact that you and I both have a smartphone. I haven't seen yours, but I know you have one. I could just guarantee it.
Yeah.
And how does that help you, Katie? How does your smartphone help you to do your life?
Manage your life. You're able to, I put things in my calendar, I put reminders in there, contacts, so I can quickly call people. I mean, my life is in my phone, which is how it is for a lot of people. Exactly.
Yes,
it's a great tool.
And it's probably impossible for you to think about the day when you didn't have one. A lot of your parents can probably, the parents of the parents can probably, like me. But now to have one, you're lost. You're lost. So that technology is very helpful. So there are any numbers of ways in which technology can provide reminders. Linda's not literate. I'll just say that. She's not literate, but she has a phone, and she actually has a hearing loss. So looked online, of course, probably from my phone, and found a phone. She has a landline because actually she doesn't really need, she doesn't need a mobile phone anymore. She did it one time when she worked, but she's not working. So she has a phone that has the ability to ring louder. Okay. And then also you put pictures. So I have people's numbers. And then their picture, like I have put in the number, and then I put their picture on top of it. So she pushes my picture, it dials my number. I probably didn't explain that very well, but she pushes my picture, it dials my number. She pushes the picture of Bonnie, her friend in Louisville, it dials Bonnie's number.
So a perfect support.
A perfect support
Yes.
for her, so that she can be more independent,
Yes.
because she's not going to learn to remember our phone numbers, So, but there's lots of technology that can really help people to be more independent. And then, in terms of your community and resources there, and then the eligibility specific, there are going to be services that ideally your son or daughter will access as part of the transition planning process. But it really is all of this working together to get to that. And as I may talk in a minute, not all of these may be available. So it's really thinking about what can we do with, with the resources that we have. So that's about vision. And then it's really going to be critical that people think about money. Now, I'm going to talk about money from a couple of different points of view. So you now have an opportunity as a family member and for your son or daughter really to create an intentional savings program.
Okay.
So just as many families may save for college, for their children when they leave school, you can save for your child with a disability and not jeopardize their eligibility for what I just call means-tested government programs,
Okay.
particularly something called supplemental security income and Medicaid.
Okay.
So when in our other recording, Katie, I asked you if you had a college savings plan, and you told me you did.
Yes.
And that's called a 529 plan. And so your family saved money, or grandparents
Yes,
saved money
correct.
to help you go to college and then
Yes.
I assume to graduate school.
Yes.
So can you just tell folks, what were you able to use that money for in your college savings plan?
A lot of different things. I used it for tuition a little bit. I used it to buy some books. For a while, I used it to help supplement like income so I could pay rent for my apartment. So I used it for a lot of different things. Really, it was a pretty broad
Category, but it was
Yes.
related to your education.
Yes, absolutely. I wasn't like going shopping. with
Right,
that
right. You weren't.
money.
That's right. You weren't.
It was all for education.
Education
correct. There were
purposes.
boundaries on
And
that.
as I kidded last time, not for your spring break trip to
No.
wherever you might have gone, because that would have not been a qualified educational experience.
Correct.
It might have expense.
Yes,
Might have been an
correct.
educational experience, but not what was
Not
intended.
something they want me to spend.
That was spent it for.
Okay.
So, ABLE accounts. The ABLE Act was passed in 2014, signed into law by President Obama in December of 2014. And I think families worked well over 10 years trying to create a savings vehicle for their children with disabilities where the funds, again, would be disregarded or excluded for purposes of eligibility for, again, supplemental security income or SSI and Medicaid.
Okay.
Because you are otherwise, you are limited. If you're on if you're on those benefits, you can only have up to $2,000 of what's called countable resources in your own name and social security number. They're really intended for people with limited income and limited resources.
Okay.
But families wanted to save. So ABLE, Achieving a Better Life Experience Act was passed. And then states started opening programs in probably about 2016 because the IRS had to tell you how you could do this, because this is a 529A plan.
Okay.
Okay, so you had a 529 college savings plan. This is a 529A plan. So the IRS has agreed that money that's saved through an ABLE account can grow tax-free, which was the same with your 529 plan.
Correct, yes.
As long as it's used for qualified educational expenses. This is for as long as it's used for qualified disability expenses.
Okay.
So Kentucky's program is called STABLE. It is administered by our state treasurer, who currently is Allison Ball. And as far as I know, that will continue in perpetuity even when Treasurer Ball is no longer treasurer, although I don't know that there's a limit on her term, but she's doing a great job. She's doing a great job. And actually, Treasurer Ball knew the state treasurer in Ohio, which was a great, talk about networking.
Yeah.
So Ohio actually opened the very first ABLE program.
Okay.
And it's a national program. So you could live in any of the 50 states and you could go through, because you're going to do this online. You don't go to a bank, you go to the internet to open an ABLE account.
Okay.
And so essentially Kentucky partnered with Ohio's program, and we got the benefit of all of the investment that Ohioans paid to create the program, and we get to take advantage of it. So we are essentially linked to the Ohio program, which to me is also really good because the financial services company where the money is invested is Vanguard, which is a very, very solid financial services company, and they have very low fees because this is an investment account. It's not really like your typical savings bank account. So stable accounts, again, that the earnings on any of the savings are tax deferred and then tax free when they're used to pay for qualified expenses. And then the balances and distributions do not affect needs-based financial aid such as Medicaid or SSI, again, supplemental security income. And then participants can request their own stable card that's similar to like a health savings account or maybe flexible spending account card, where money could be loaded onto it. So for example, if you were going to go buy a pair of glasses, you could take your stable card to wherever that store is, and then you would be able just to do that without having to actually have cash. Now, who is eligible? So anybody is eligible as long as their disability occurred before the age of 26, which I'm assuming is our entire audience here in terms of who would be listening to this recording. Your son or daughter does not have to be receiving Social Security disability benefits to qualify, but you do have to be able to provide documentation when you set up an account that you can substantiate that child's disability occurred before the age of 26. You would want to spend some time on this part of the website. So let me just first point out that you could contribute, you could open an account for your child, and then you, other family members, the child, him or herself, especially if they have a job, but can then contribute up to $15,000 a year. And that could increase. That's based on what's called the gift tax exclusion. So doubt that it would go down. It could conceivably increase, but that's a lot of money. I think we both agree. Unlike your college savings plan, where I think you could actually put like $100,000 into it, you can't do that with a stable account. So you can, the most you could put into, have one account is to contribute $15,000 a year, but it only takes $50 to open.
That's great.
Which I think is great. I think that for many people that's a manageable amount of money. And then you've got 5 choices. So you would want to click here. I'm not going to, but you would want to click there and you want to look at those investment choices. And you're not having to pick specific mutual funds. You're going to decide, do I want growth or moderate growth or conservative or I want just a risk-free, no growth, no risk. And if you're going to put $50 into it, that's where I'd put it until it had grown to be a certain amount, and then I'd try. Again, you have this opportunity for your money to grow and not have to pay taxes on the gain. So that's a really great opportunity. And then to understand that then the money in the stable account needs to be used for qualified expenses, which would include basic living expenses, housing, transportation. And I'm thinking car, not a bicycle, but obviously that shows a modified bike. So you could use money from a stable account for some kind of a modified bicycle or carrier, or that could help a child to be transported. But for a young adult, I think about car. And then education, assistive technology. We just talked about that, but a smartphone could easily be because again, the ways in which it helps to keep people safe and healthy, as well as be able to participate more fully in society, employment training, personal support services, legal fees. So, for example, in my opinion, this could lead you to save money to then set up an estate plan, which I'm going to talk about next. Okay? Because there's no fee to open a stable account, but there would be a fee to work with an attorney to have the will and things that you need to have in place, health and wellness, and then financial management. Now, one important thing to understand is that you would be responsible for maintaining receipts. So, for example, I have opened a stable account for my friend Linda, for whom I'm managing her money, and she does receive Medicaid because she's on the Michelle P. waiver. So she's under that $2,000 resource limit. And because Linda's worked, and I would just advocate for that really strongly, Linda's worked probably 35 out of her 66 years, pretty much on a part-time basis, still maintained her eligibility for a Social Security disability benefit of one sort or another. But because of that, she contributed payroll taxes. When you work, you can typically contribute payroll taxes, your employer matches it. So Linda now at 66 has a very, very nice retirement income from Social Security. And she's a woman of simple means. She has a bunny rabbit, but is not into purses or clothes or just things that, she only needs one reasonably big screen TV. So she's a woman of modest means. So I'm putting money into the stable account in large part to keep her under that limit, but then I am saving she wears transition lenses. So those are $400 or $500 when she needs a new pair. And actually probably saving for hearing aids, which she's not inclined to think she wants to wear, but at some point, might have to, or saving for if there are just other medical things down the road that Medicaid or Medicare won't pay for. So again, not $15,000 a year, but $100 a month. Is what we're doing, and so it is a really great opportunity.
Well, I was just going to say, especially for a lot of our audience, these high school transition age students, putting money into account like this really sets them up to hopefully reach the types of goals that they've set for themselves in their vision planning, education, employment-wise. It allows
Exactly.
them to have the financial freedom to pursue the things that they're really interested
Exactly.
in.
And so again,
Which is wonderful.
I'm really of the mindset that something's better than nothing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I wouldn't have had, I wouldn't have $15,000 a year, but I'd have something.
Yep.
You know, so just something is better than nothing. And
Absolutely.
even the Stable account will send, I think, electronic messages to family members that when it's your birthday, you know, you can gift money into my Stable account, you know,
That's
as opposed to maybe buying me something I don't need. So this is really a great financial planning tool, both for now and then for the future. But then moving on into the future in terms of your vision and wanting to safeguard it, there are certain, they're going to be, hopefully, you know, you need to be looking at income for your child.
Okay.
So I want to talk about a couple of resources around that area. So many of your children now, or when they turn age 18, may qualify to receive a benefit through the Social Security Administration. That is not Social Security.
Okay.
But it's called Supplemental Security Income, or SSI. So SSI is administered through the Social Security Administration, but it's not Social Security. The funding for those payments, which are now probably over $1 trillion in the United States, it's a significant amount of frankly, taxpayer dollars. It comes out of the U.S. Federal Treasury.
Okay.
So anyone who receives an SSI payment hasn't contributed toward it.
Okay.
People who receive a Social Security Disability Insurance, or SSDI benefit, it's off somebody's work record.
Okay.
So if your child has been receiving an SSI payment while they're a child, once they turn 18, they're going to have something called an age 18 redetermination. Okay. So I want to talk about that. And so this is a book, Katie, that I think would be great to be a part of transition planning meetings. It's free. It's on the Social Security website.
Okay.
So it's what you need to know about your supplemental security income when you turn 18.
Okay.
Because making the assumption that your child will always be eligible for this benefit is just that. It's an assumption.
Okay.
And there are certainly many, many children who will continue to be eligible because they will meet the adult definition of disability, but there are also children who will not.
Okay.
So this states, you know, that we will be contacting you within a year of turning age 18, so you can anticipate your child getting a letter between age 18 and age 19, or even might be 1920, but it's going to happen whether or not your child works. Okay. This will occur. Because again, they're going to determine your eligibility based on disability rules for adults. And so those are not the same as the disability rules for children. So there's going to be a lot of information that you'll have to provide. Okay. And one of the things that I just want families to know is right here. Historically, about 1/3 of children lose their SSI eligibility following the age 18 redetermination. But in any event, hopefully you can see, but to get the booklet, just to know that not everyone does. And again, because the nature of the disability may not be significant enough.
Okay.
So it was as a child, but not as an adult. But there's some wonderful work incentives if that were to happen to your child. And I'm going to come over here. That if that did happen, and your child was determined to be no longer medically eligible after the age 18 redetermination, it says your SSI payments usually stop. However, if you are participating in an approved program of special education, vocational rehabilitation, or similar services, your benefits may continue until you stop participating in the program because of this SSI continued payments rule. So that, to me, Katie, is a really good reason to stay in school. It's a really, really good reason to work with the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, to be on a career path, to be getting additional training, or getting a job. Gotcha. Because your SSI payment will at least continue. Again, it's kind of like helping to launch you as a young adult, you know, to be a level of a stepping stone. So, and then if your son or daughter does continue to be eligible, or if they're even working while they're 16,
yeah.
I just really, I can't stress enough, parents, that the value of work just will. I'm assuming it served you well. We talked about how it serves us well, but work is so much more than just money. I mean, work is, well, why do you work, Katie? I mean, in addition to money. What are reasons that you would give for working?
Gives you a purpose. I like my job. I feel like it's important, so it makes me feel like I have a purpose and fulfill me in ways other than just getting money. And I know it does that for everyone.
Right. And so it's a sense of purpose, identity, and usually relationships and friendships.
True. I have a lot of good friends that I've met through work, either at this job or previous jobs, and have kept those connections. So.
That's right. So it's not just about the money, although money is helpful. Yeah. And while $771 a month now, this is in 2019 when we're doing this, that's the most that a person would receive on SSI. And so if I'm living at home with mom or dad and I'm paying my fair share, because I'd have to be paying, they need to be paying you their fair share of room and board, you know, they may have $300 left over. Well, that's a lot when you're living at home with mom and dad. But I think you and I would both agree, Katie, that on $771 a month, you can't do very much.
It doesn't go very far.
It wouldn't go very far. So again, thinking of that vision, you know, frankly, it may be fine for your son or daughter to live with you for a period of time, but at some point they may, like their siblings, want to be able to move out or have a place of their own. Or again, at some point you might not be, you're not going to be here. So again, trying to think about ways that we can have additional income.
Absolutely.
And so work is one of those ways. So just know that while your student, your son or daughter is in high school, Social Security has an extraordinary work incentive called the Student Earned Income Exclusion. And so this allows youth under age 18 who are regularly attending school, and that doesn't have to be full-time, essentially to have some of their earnings excluded from their countable income when determining SSI eligibility and payment. So what that means is that while a student is in school, and actually that could also be college or university, and see it's at least 8 hours a week, grades 7 through 12 for at least 12 hours a week. So again, it's not even necessarily full-time. What that to me means is that really you could be going to school part-time and working, is that there'd be no reduction in that student's SSI payment, which is really wonderful. So again, it's trying to encourage students to work. So if you had the 771 and you make $400 a month, there's no reduction of the SSI payment. You would have both. And then it's also going to talk about another amazing work incentive called PASS. So this is just a really, really important book to me, Katie, for families to read in this post-secondary transition. Again, to clarify what some of their, what may be their misunderstanding about SSI, one, that it may or may not continue. And if it does continue, that really there's a huge work incentive to encourage their son or daughter to go to work. And then I want to talk about what would happen after your son or daughter is no longer in school, because then yes, there would be an impact to their SSI payment. And so Social Security, and I don't know how well you can see this, but all I want you to be able to see is that essentially Social Security has a formula. And so when people work and are on SSI, their SSI payment is not reduced dollar for dollar.
Okay.
I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
There's a formula. So this sheet, and this is something that I've sent to Katie and is available, you know, that you could get a copy of, and we update this every year on our website. So if your son or daughter never goes to work, again, they would have $771 a month. But let's say they go to work and they earn $320 a month. Well, then their bank account would have $973.50. Now, yes, their SSI payment's going to be reduced, but actually you have to decide, do you want more SSI payment or do you want more money in the bank? Because the way the formula works is that actually the lower the SSI payment is because of work, the higher your bank account is. And that's just the nature of the formula. So it really rewards people who work, in my opinion. Now, yes, so you think, well, the SSI payment goes down, but if the money goes up, your son or daughter still has the money to pay you room and board, and maybe they actually could pay more.
Absolutely.
They might be able to pay more, but it also sets them up then, again, to have the opportunity to, at some point, maybe move out. Or I know of families who have actually created a separate living space in their own home for their son or daughter with a disability so that they have greater independence. But again, they're going to pay a greater share of the utilities, or they're going to pay for their own cell phone, and they may even have their own cable. I mean, I don't know. You know, they're going to pay more. They're going to share more in the overall cost of the house. And then you say, well, what happens to Medicaid? Well, as long as you keep under that $2,000 resource limit, you'll have it.
Okay.
And actually, believe it or not, Social Security has another huge work incentive, that allows people to earn up to over $30,000 a year in Kentucky and still maintain their Medicaid eligibility.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So your SSI payment could go to zero.
Okay.
So again, hanging on to the SSI to me is detrimental. I mean, if in fact your family member can work, and I believe the majority of people can work at some level. I mean, there may be few instances where the impact of disability is so significant that that's really not realistic, but I don't think that's the majority of students.
Yes.
It's not the majority of students. And in fact, the opposite is usually that there's been low expectations and lack of opportunity.
Absolutely.
So in any event, I just want you all to get accurate information about, again, what happens to benefits when people go to work, and you can do that. This organization called the Center for Accessible Living, now again, I'm going to just go to the next page because that 800 number is pretty big. I think you can see that. So the Center for Accessible Living is an organization. They are based in Louisville. But they provide a free service to families, to students, to anybody receiving a Social Security disability benefit to understand, so what happens to my benefits when I go to work?
Okay.
So if you forget everything I've told you today, which I hope you won't, but at least you may remember that people can go to work, still maintain probably a cash payment unless they're earning well over $1,600.
Yeah.
They're going to maintain still some SSI cash payment, but you can still maintain Medicaid. But that 800 number, you can contact them and they'll tell you what I've told you,
Okay.
essentially. But you could, again, have somebody to go to for ongoing questions. Actually, I had a phone call on the way here today from a friend whose sister has been, I guess, receiving a benefit off her own work record for 20 or 25 years and is thinking about going back, actually has a job offer. And actually, like 25 hours a week at $12 an hour, which is not bad if you haven't worked for a long time.
Yeah.
In any event, but I, again, wanted to find out where she lived and got them connected with this agency for them. So, excuse me. So just know those are resources. So your son or daughter having an income would really, really be helpful in this. You're saving money through a stable account. And then wanting to let you know about the kinds of estate planning that you may need to, well, let me talk first about CommuniCare, and then I'll come back to other estate planning. So in terms of publicly funded services, CommuniCare is your community mental health center for this area, and so really if you've not made contact with their developmental and intellectual disabilities office, I would encourage you to do so. Those folks could be helpful to you in terms of helping you to get on waiting list for the Michelle P. waiver, or the supports for community living, because all of those waivers now, you get on the waiting list online. Okay. And CommuniCare should be able to help families to do that. And then also, we do have a directory. Again, I'm part of the Human Development Institute. If you go to our website, you can scroll down, and we have an online directory. And we also have a directory that you could print out. But if you click on Community Living, it will give you the names of all the various publicly funded services. Again, heart-supported living is something to consider because there are very large waiting lists now for the Michelle P. waiver, the supports for community living waiver. There's not a large waiting list. There's not a waiting list at all, as far as I know, for the home and community-based waiver. And this would be if your child really has significant impairments, usually physical impairments, and actually would meet nursing home level of care. But that there are families who do get services from this waiver, and it's really helpful to them. And then the waiver that most families tend to know about is about the Michelle P. waiver. And again, the Michelle P. waiver offers services that can really help while your child is in school and out of school in terms of, again, community living supports or supported employment. But right now there's a really, really, really very large waiting list. And so if you're not on it, you need to get on it. And so CommuniCare should be able to help you to do that. And then the supports for community living waiver is the other waiver. And for both of these, here's the website. It's right there. It's called Benefind. And so you could do that on your own. You could kind of see if you can figure that out, or you could try to, again, CommuniCare could help. And then the last area I want to talk about, Katie, is what families need to do to put things in place legally. And so the stable account is a great place to be saving money for your child. But if you want to leave, if you were to, for whatever, be in a car wreck, and you want, and really it's important to figure out what would happen, again, to my child in terms of who would take care of them, but also what kind of money would I want there to be available. You're going to need something different than the stable account. You can't, for example, leave or make the stable account a beneficiary of a life insurance policy.
So you have to have some,
you really have to have some other vehicle. Exactly, and some other vehicle in place. And so that vehicle people refer to as special needs trust. And so I want to talk about Life Plan of Kentucky, because Life Plan is really a resource for families regardless of where they live in Kentucky, and really was designed probably for most of the listening audience. I think of myself as a person of modest means. And so Life Plan can work for people who have lots of means, but it's really, we've created a pooled special needs trust, Katie, that essentially people can join. So instead of having to work with an attorney to create your own, which would be more expensive, you can create it, you can join Life Plan of Kentucky and essentially have your own, your trust managed through Life Plan. So I'm going to at least show you some of the things on the website. So if I click on Learn More, there actually are some articles about what are special needs trusts. Again, this may be kind of hard to see, but there's like what is funding, like what is a pool trust? Well, what is a special needs trust? If you click on there, there's an article about that. What is a pool trust and how does it help protect my family member? Funding a special needs trust, how much is enough? And we'll see if this will open, kind of do a little presentation about what life plan is. Well, I don't want to be the life of the party. So no, I think it's not going to let me do that. Yeah, maybe it's a Prezi presentation, so we'll see if it will load. Okay. So Life Plan is located in Lexington, but it serves all of Kentucky. And so it's a nonprofit, it's a 501c3 organization, which pool trust that's required by the federal law. And we provide the trustee services. I used to be on the board, that's why I say we, but that's often an issue for families, is who's going to be the trustee.
Okay.
So sometimes there may or may not be other, especially now. I mean, if all of your children are under the age of 18, they can't function in that role. And even thinking down the road, those children, when they're grown, may or may not be in the area, or you may not feel as though they'd be the best person to take on that role. So Life Plan serves as the trustee, and then also provides a lot of education and guidance regarding this kind of long-range planning. And so the executive director is not this person featured here, but her name is Karen Perch. But Karen is a member of the American Academy of Estate Planning Attorneys. She herself is an estate planning attorney, and she has a sister with a developmental disability, which is really what interested her in doing this. And so a great deal of her private practice has been around helping families plan, but then also she just knows so much about how all of this works together. So, as I said earlier, under current federal and even state law, typically a person with a disability having more than $2,000 in countable resources may not be eligible for Medicaid assistance. So with a pooled special needs or supplemental needs trust account, the individual can receive the benefits of the resources and still receive Medicaid or supplemental security income. So again, the money in that account is disregarded, just like with a stable account, for purposes of Medicaid or SSI eligibility. So it's a way to still have the benefit of those publicly funded programs. So this is a picture of Danny Lederer and a very handsome brother-in-law. Danny was a member of his sister's wedding party, and his family had done all of this planning on his behalf, and so I just like to show some Kentuckians as well. So here are some advantages of a pooled special needs trust. So just like really with stable accounts, if you put money into a stable account, Vanguard's going to figure that out for you, and I don't know, again, that's not my forte. So, excuse me, with Life Plan, we have professional wealth managers, and then, excuse me, when somebody wants money out of the trust, we'll make sure that that's done correctly, so that it's not distributed in such a way that jeopardizes a person's eligibility. The cost, now there's no cost to do a stable account, but there is a cost to open an account with Life Plan, and it's between $100 and $500 depending on the person's income. Okay. But that's substantially less than if you were to work with a private attorney, and I'm not putting any of them down because one size doesn't fit all. Yeah. But it's much more expensive to have your own trust. And I use the analogy of I like to swim, and so people could have a swimming pool out their back door if they have the money, right, and the land to build one or to even get an above-ground pool. But then they also have all the responsibility for maintaining it. Right, the chemical balance, and also the liability issues if somebody gets in there in the middle of the night and drowns, and so. Yes, you have your own pool, but you also have a lot of responsibility and expenses and risk associated with that. Versus you can do what I do, which is I belong to the Y. So the Y paid to build the pool, and the Y keeps the chemicals, and the Y has a lifeguard. Now, I can't go swimming at 2 in the morning, not that I'd want to, but I have to go when the Y is open. But I appreciate the fact that I can, but I joined the Y, and so I pay a membership fee. So similarly, you're going to join Life Plan. There's just a one-time what we call enrollment fee, but then Life Plan has created the trust. The board of directors assumes essentially a fiduciary responsibility for the management of the money, and you really do have somebody who knows what they're doing. So when requests are made, so for example, we've helped people go on vacation. Well, we don't send that person a check for $1,000. We pay for things.
Gotcha.
Or if someone wants to buy a car, we send the check to the dealership. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Because a trustee role with this, a special needs or supplemental needs trust is not a line of credit. You just don't write checks to people.
Yeah.
And so there's also then potentially taxes. So anyway, now all of that is done. Plus we will manage small amounts of money. Now, I don't know about you all, but $500 is a lot of money to me. But families who have, $50,000 is a lot of money. Well, I can tell you no bank would be interested in being a corporate trustee. In fact, Chase wants $5 million. So, again, for most of us, that's not that's way out of what we're able to do. So Life Plan will manage smaller amounts of money. It's very accessible. It's very accessible to families, right, who can save. And so it's governed by a volunteer board of directors that includes, actually, I think we have 3 or 4 parents. I think we have 4 parents right now, but all of whom also have professional identities as well.
Okay.
Financial advisors, human service professionals. We have an estate planning attorney on our board, as well as, and it's staffed by Karen, who's an estate planning attorney, and a full-time trust operations coordinator. And actually, we now have 2 more part-time people because it's grown. So this is me in the middle. This is my friend Linda and Jennifer, who's was one of her community living supports persons. But again, just to point out the, I guess I just wanted to point out that the value of relationships and figuring things out really makes a lot of sense. So again, it works by people essentially join the trust. There is a one-time enrollment fee. Now, the funds are held by partner financial institutions, and then there is a management fee that is charged monthly on whatever is in that account. Okay. That's how Life Plan generates revenue to support itself. Okay, so it's really self-funded.
But correct me if I'm wrong, that would be similar to any other type of financial investment.
Exactly. That's how they.
Standard.
That's industry standard. Thank you, Katie. Very good. It is industry standard, and actually our fees are really quite reasonable, and we do things for you. I mean, there's a lot of work there. That's why we now have more staff. There's a lot of work, really, when the distribution requests come in to vet them. To vet them to make sure that they're in the best interest of the person. And then also we have lots of clients, frankly, who have, I would just say they're extra grace required. I mean, they're just folks who have very high needs. Have very high needs. And so I'm not being negative, but just that there really is a person who answers the phone. How's that, Katie?
You're able to
provide that service. So people who may be anxious or just who just really need a lot of we provide a lot of emotional support. So you don't get a voice prompt. You get a real person when you call.
That's wonderful.
And it is. So there's a lot of service that's provided. So that's also a picture of that's Matt Lowe. Matt and his sister Katie. So Matt actually works, I think 20 to maybe 25 to 30 hours a week actually at UPS in Louisville.
Okay.
And he's a Teamster.
Okay.
So Matt's a good example of just, again, a young man. In fact, he now receives, I think, an SSDI benefit off his own work record. He may be earning too much to even get that, but his parents have done this kind of planning. But again, to reach his goals, yeah, to be able to do that. So I just wanted, those are just, so actually the website's correct. Actually, Life Plan's going to be moving later this month because expanded, and so need more room, but we'll still be in Lexington. So it is a really good resource for families around this whole area of financial planning. There may be attorneys in this area that can help with this issue. People still need to have a will and powers of attorney. And so I think just the last thing I want to talk about, Katie, is just this whole issue of guardianship. And I think what I'd like to suggest is that families, before not assuming guardianship, but it's just to explore this concept of supported decision making.
Okay.
And so again, at age 18, I'll just go over to here to show that. I mean, at age 18, your son or daughter, regardless of impact of disability, and frankly, your son or daughter who doesn't have a disability at age 18 are legally an adult. Now, I don't know about you, Katie, but at age 18, did you always make wise decisions? I don't know, you might have. You might have. But I think we can all agree, when we were 18, we didn't always make wise decisions.
You're learning and growing. Yes, you're a young adult.
And you're going to test the waters. And so, but my parents didn't rush down to the court and petition the court for guardianship. Now, granted, I didn't have a cognitive impairment, although I did make bad decisions. So understandably, schools need a mechanism to show that you can legally act on behalf of your son or daughter. So guardianship was one route to pursue, but also you could have a durable power. You could be their durable power of attorney, and you could have powers that relate to educational decisions. And so, just know that that's something to explore, because again, guardianship often what happens is it makes people very passive. It can make people really passive and overly reliant and dependent. And so I was Linda's limited guardian when that order expired. I just actually worked with Karen Perch, and I now have about a 5-page power of attorney. So I have financial powers, I have medical powers. I actually called her physician's office yesterday. She needed prescriptions refilled, and they have that power of attorney on, it's in the, probably the medical record system, to show that I can act on her behalf. And said she needs these 2 prescriptions. Can you send that up to somebody to get that done? So I have found that I can do everything I did for Linda before as her guardian, as her power of attorney, and I don't have to complete the reports. Which isn't to say I don't want to be accountable, but the financial reporting that the court requires is very onerous. I don't know any other word for it. Guardians are expected to really be able to report on, frankly, every penny that the person spends. And I don't know about you, but would you can you save all your Kroger receipts?
No.
I mean, it really means then having to figure out how do you scan receipts and save receipts, and there are ways to safeguard money, and also to realize that even when I was her guardian, I live in Lexington, she lives in Louisville, you're not attached to the hip to your child. And so part of it, I think, is helping figure out how do we help any young adult to try to make good decisions.
Right. Okay.
Or to have the supports they need so that they're not placed in situations where they can be taken advantage of. And so, I think it's some combination. So I certainly know there are students who do need guardians, but I don't think everybody does. How's that?
That is wonderful.
Does that make sense?
And I think that people don't necessarily realize, and parents and families, the other options that are out there in lieu of full guardianship.
And so we do have a project at HDI, and I don't know if you can see Laura's email, but Laura Smith is glad to help. We actually have data that we've collected from people who are served through the waivers, and I think this is really compelling, Katie, that people who do not have guardians are more likely to be employed, more likely to have friends, less likely to report being lonely, and less likely to take psychotropic medication.
Pretty powerful.
It is powerful because, again, there's got to be an effort to try to help people make decisions, and even if the person has a guardian, to include that person to try to make them to help them to be more self-empowered, and again to be able to advocate for themselves.
Okay.
So again, my recommendation is that you explore the power of attorney.
Okay.
And then if you need to do guardianship, but it's real hard to go the other way.
Okay.
It's harder to get rights restored.
Understand.
And either way, I just really encourage you to help your young adult vote. That'd be my last advocacy. That I doubt that any of us know exactly everybody we're voting for when we go into the voting booth, you know? I mean, but we know the major ones.
Yeah.
And so if your son or daughter is turning 18, and even if they have a guardian, they can vote. But to really look at that opportunity as part of being a citizen and having an active role and a voice in this great country that we live in. So, do you have any other questions? Or do you think I've covered the universe?
I think you've covered it all. It sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, really the first place for families to start if they haven't really thought about the vision and the life that they would want for their student is to start there and vision plan together.
I think so. I really do.
And kind of dig in and figure out what nuts and bolts do we need to put into place with these wonderful resources to make that vision happen.
Exactly, Katie. You said it exactly right. And then your legal mechanisms are really to safeguard that vision that you have for your child. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome.
That was very interesting and very needed for parents.
Okay.
So,
well, all the best.
thank you again for watching.